All right, folks, welcome to season 3, episode 1 of the Midnight Burial podcast. And yes, I'm still alive. I'm still chubby. I am still figuring out my life. I don't know. It's been a minute and I've been busy, but hopefully doing things that are enjoyable. I don't know. The Nintendojo website has been redesigned. That was not me, that was the co owner. And note I said co-owner because I am the other co-owner. I am very pleased, after working at the site for 13 years now, getting close to 14, something like that. It's been at least 13. Uh, I talked with the main person in charge of the site, and it was just like, we worked something out to where now I'm co-owner, and I'm very pleased with this. So I can like kind of truly say that Bits and Bytes is a sister site to Nintendojo. We have big plans moving forward. It's way more readable on mobile. So if you have ever tried to access the site on your phone and you're like, oh, that's really hard to read, that problem is gone. It's as readable as Bits and Bytes in your hand now. So I'm so pleased and happy about that. And that was like the other guy, that was all him. And I've given suggestions here and there in the time since, but like that was all his design work. And I was like, this is so cool because, like, I mean, I guess our brains are on a similar wavelength because I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted. Yeah, there you go. Other than like maybe one or two little things here and there, that's how I would have did it. But anyway, so that's been a development, and then I have Bits and Bytes, going again. It's been a little rough. I'm running 2 sites. It's hard. There's no school right now, thank God. It's summer vacation, so I don't have to teach anybody. But that will change next week when summer school starts up. But the goal is moving forward, having both sites running, doing more content, more of this wonderful, podcasting content. Still, working on get video going, whatever, but it's a process. Wish me luck. All right, so Summer Game Fest just wrapped not too long ago. That was a lot of fun. I'll briefly talk Summer Game Fest. I had recorded one version of this already where I was going on for a little long, and I'm like, it was already a couple weeks ago. But just if you're unaware, Summer Game Fest is basically the modern replacement for E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, which was formerly run by, I think, the ESA. I might have got my 3-letter agency wrong. But yeah, Summer Game Fest, it's really coming to its own. This year they had the stage show at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Now they've been in LA, each year as far as I know, and the 2 times I went previously, it was at the YouTube Theater, which is like nothing to sneeze at, but the Dolby Theater's in Hollywood proper. Like I was on the Walk of Fame going into the building. So that was cool. And the stage show, last year's stage show, again, that was also really good, but this one there were just so many explosive moments where the crowd was going nuts. And it's like last year's Capper. No, was it the Capper Requiem? Did they show that off? Getting an old man moment here. I can't remember if Requiem. I know there was like multiple Resident Evil showings, but I think the capper was Requiem, and like it ended with that as like the big surprise. Like we're actually showing you the game. This year they led off with the new Resident Evil game, and then there were a bunch of other giant announcements besides that. But it was cool. It's I think there's public access to the stage show, if I'm remembering correctly. I know that there were like seat fillers showing up, desperate to get in. I think you can buy a ticket, but this is like an industry event. This is media people coming in, and I mean, not to knock E3. At the end they were starting to let the public in, and that's fine. But I think uh, I'm going to do one of my favorite things, which is to make fun of the journalists who are like, we don't need these in-person events anymore. The public's moved past things like E3. It's like, shut up. I'm sorry, but like as I'm sitting, so let me give you another insight here. So when you're done with SGF, the stage show, there is SGF play days. And play days are held in Los Angeles, and it's like a mini E3. There's a venue that's booked, and the game publishers and developers, they come out, set up different booths and areas for you to go into, and you get to try all these different games. It's all invite only. It's only game industry people. And I always get kind of rubbed the wrong way when I'm sitting in like the press area and you see these guys that are dead inside. Like, it's the worst thing in the world that they're in Los Angeles eating free food, playing games, talking to developers. It's like, well, I don't know what you want to do, man. I mean, okay, maybe your job sucks, like you have a crappy boss and maybe your outlet just isn't that good or whatever. But like, I'm 13 years into this and I'm still grateful for everything I get to do by being part of the industry, the games journalist side of it, right? Um, I just find it so fascinating. I love talking about it. I love writing about it. I love playing the games. So in my head, I just think of myself as being a fan first and a journalist second, I guess. So when I see these people who just, they don't seem to appreciate where they are and what they're doing, it's just like, dude, go find another job. Like, I'm sorry, but you're killing the vibe here, man. You know, not to sound so Gen Z, but it's like everyone should be like happy to be here. Enjoy yourself. Have fun with this, man. Like, what's the alternative? Go work at Taco Bell? I mean, I'd rather be here doing this than having some lame, boring corporate gig, right? So that's that part of things bugs me. But yeah, so the play days, there were a bunch of great games shown off. I got to preview some stuff, and those previews and things will be on Bits and Bytes and Nintendo Joe as the days go by. But yeah, going back to my point that I was making, which is games journalists, especially after E3 died, are quick to just act like these things don't matter. These in-person events don't matter. And maybe it's born of that, seemingly dissatisfied feeling that they have to just even be going to these places. But I cannot overstate how fascinating it is being in a crowd of people and feeling their reaction to what you're seeing, on the stage. There were several moments where the crowd was just like bursting in response to what they were being shown. Snoop Dogg with Tupac showing up in the game for Stranger Than Heaven. That was a huge moment, right? I actually thought it was hilarious because somebody in the crowd shouted out. It was like after they showed Tupac, and then you heard, there's a special guest that's going to appear. And then somebody yelled out, "It's Tupac! It's going to be Tupac!" Because, if you're unaware, right, Tupac was murdered, but people like to say, no, he faked his death. And it's like, yeah, so he faked his death so that he was waiting for his reveal as an NPC in Stranger Than Heaven. That's when the mask's coming down, the wizard steps from behind the curtain. Yes, I'm still alive. Oh, that was so funny. But like, I've talked about this before, but if you think back to when Nintendo decided to say screw it to E3's stage show, because E3 had a stage show and Nintendo would show up, all of the publishers would, and they'd show off their games that are coming out. Well, Nintendo was like, well, why do we need to attach ourselves to what E3 is doing? There's this wonderful thing called the internet and, YouTube, and we can just do a video of our own where we show off our own announcements, and we become our own center point of focus because we're doing it that way. I have said, and this would happen. I would bet money that this would happen if you were to say, well, not the new president, but let's go back to Reggie. Maybe the new president of Nintendo, but whoever it is, right? Let's say it's Reggie still. You say to the public, yeah, Reggie is going to be at this Buc-ee's in Texas using the bathroom in this specific stall, and he's going to read to you the list of what we're publishing over the next, 12 to 18 months, that Buc-ee's bathroom would be just stuffed with people with microphones, desperate to hear what's coming out, right? That was the glory of Nintendo's invention with the Nintendo Direct. And then the other big guys have followed suit, right? So we have now State of Play for PlayStation. We've got Xbox Games Showcase, right, for Microsoft. And the Nintendo Directs are still going. But here's the thing. What we saw following the pandemic was that when all these other publishers and developers, they wanted to do their own little showcases. I mean, they're still doing them, right? And then you have other shows like IGN Live, which just, let's face it, are nowhere near as big. But what Summer Games Fest is showing is, yeah, there's actually still a taste for these more dedicated showpieces. So yeah, we don't have E3 anymore, and people are going to tune in for, again, Sony doing like State of Play. But if you're a smaller studio, or you're just, even if you're a bigger studio like Capcom, right? And Capcom's been doing its own showcases too. But what I think they're starting to realize is it's like, people only have so much bandwidth, right? There's only so much time and attention that you can devote. If everyone has a showcase, then basically no one has a showcase. How am I going to sit and pay attention to, 40 minutes, 30 minutes over and over for every publisher? Here's Konami, here's Capcom, here's Square Enix, and, just on and on and on. It's like, no, I think the big guys, the big three, can get away with it. And even within their showcases, the smaller publishers are like, here's our games, right? The smaller studios say, here's what we got coming to Nintendo. Here's what's coming to Xbox. Now everything else can be centralized under the Summer Game Fest banner. So with SGF, you're able to consolidate whatever's left. And I think that's fine. Because again, I don't agree with these other game journalists that think this stuff doesn't matter. It's exciting. And then you, as the journalist, your job is not to shill, right? But to at least express your excitement or disappointment when you see these things. I can tell you for a fact that there were some announcements at Summer Game Fest that landed with a thud. It's just like, oh, okay. It's like when Fortnite, right? Fortnite had, I don't even remember what it was anymore, but they announced something during the stage show at Summer Game Fest, and people were just kind of like, oh, yeah, like, golf applause. Like, that's cool. No one was excited. Not in the way that they were when, Resident Evil Veronica showed up and these other huge titles, Final Fantasy VII Revelation. So I know I felt it, and then you try to convey it in your writing, if you're recording things. And I'm not necessarily speaking for myself because I'm not anywhere near as active as other platforms at this point. But I think you get my point. It's like if you're writing for whatever, maybe you're a Nintendo Life writer or something, and you're sitting in the crowd and you see this awesome thing that is going to come to Switch, you feel it in your bones, and it's going to come through. Hopefully you go to do a YouTube video. That's not the same as, well, here's the trailer that got soullessly uploaded onto YouTube. So I completely stand by these in-person events mattering. And even if it's just the one, it's Summer Game Fest and it's not, E3, who cares? It's cool. At the Playdays showcase that comes after, this year they had, they've done it before, but it felt like there were more kind of like cool things on display to look at. And then you take photos of those things and you share them, and it gets people pumped up. So yeah, I thought SGF was very successful this year. I think that they're also, Jeff Keighley's very gracious in terms of how he treats the press and media that come there. You feel very welcome. you feel supported throughout your time there. That's another reason where, like, maybe this is a little too much getting into, into baseball here, into the weeds, but it's not cheap going to Los Angeles if you're not, in the area, right? You actually have to travel there. And then that means, getting a hotel, that means getting food. Jeff Keighley will at least help cover you for food. I'll tell you that much. Speaking as a fat person, I'm always very impressed with the food offerings from Jeff Keighley and Summer Game Fest. Don't change any of that, Jeff. Please. I'm poverty stricken. I am a teacher 99% of the time. So yes, that's very helpful and very appreciated, like legitimately. So, yeah, anyway, probably rambling now at this point, but SGF was very cool. And one of the big companies, right, from SGF, that's Xbox. So I wanted to talk about Xbox primarily for this, first episode of season 3. So right now, let's get into what's going on, which is, first of all, if you don't know, Xbox has a new CEO. This happened a while ago. Phil Spencer's gone. He's been replaced with Asha Sharma. Now, she's fascinating when you start looking at her because she is a former head of one of the AI departments for Microsoft. So, of course, soon as she's appointed, people start raising an eyebrow and they're like, oh, well, an AI person, that's not good. And we still don't necessarily know what that will amount to in terms of development and everything. She has gone on record as saying no, like garbage AI will be used for developing anything for Xbox. But I think that's missing the point. People want no AI. It's a completely unnecessary tool. So, ignoring that for a minute, looking at the Xbox brand, right? She's done several things trying to correct course for Xbox. And, some of it's smaller scale, things that people aren't going to notice even remotely for themselves. For example, let's say you look at their emails now. They have, it's like xbox.com instead of being under the Microsoft umbrella. That's a small thing, but it is just sort of establishing, hey, we're Xbox. We're the games focused division of Microsoft. We're our own thing. Other stuff, new startup animation for Xbox and all caps rebranding for the name. But there's bigger things too, including things like exclusives, right? So during State of Play, I guess Asha made some waves because she or one of the people under her went to Sony allegedly and said, hey, we don't want you showing the Halo trailer that we have lined up. So that's the campaign evolved new mission trailer. They were like, we're going to show that, and it's going to be for the Xbox Game Showcase. You're not showing it for State of Play. And I guess Sony was like kind of looking forward to showing that off because that's a big get, right? And instead they had to basically not even acknowledge it. But why would she do that? Well, it's asserting Xbox as a proper game brand. Xbox is and should be, its own thing. It stands as a proper, dedicated gaming entity. So let me give a little history here. You go back to the original Xbox, right? So that's the PS2 GameCube era. And, this is Bill Gates. I think, isn't Steve Ballmer involved? This is their like pet project. This random, hey, look, Microsoft is making a game console. And I think a lot of people looked and were like, why? But it comes out and you have a huge splash with Halo, right? So the original Halo, that game's huge. In particular, it's multiplayer. And before you know it, Xbox is firmly entrenched as the third pillar of the industry. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, the big guys in terms of gaming. Well, then you get to Xbox 360 and PS3. So this is where you start to see a shift. everybody was playing online on Xbox 360 because Microsoft put a lot of attention and care into that network and the experience of being on Xbox Live. And so if your buddies wanted to play Call of Duty, if they wanted to play Halo, even maybe Battlefield, stuff like that, that's where you went. You played on Xbox 360. I've told this story before, but one of my friends, my buddy Phil, he shows up at my house. It's like, I don't know, 9-10 o'clock at night. It was dark. Knocks on my door and is like, here you go. And my friends had gotten together to get me the red Resident Evil Xbox 360. It was used. They were like, here you go. You take care of the rest. You got to get Xbox Live. You got to get the games, but we want you to play Call of Duty with us. And so I did. And for years, that was the standard. It was Xbox 360. Now, during this period, Sony stumbles, right? Because PlayStation 2 is the biggest name in gaming at that point. But here comes PlayStation 3. And PlayStation 3 just felt like this kind of bloated mess at launch. You have the giant piano console, right? That big shiny black thing. It has the font for the Spider-Man 3 movie for whatever reason. The infamous, Ridge Racer E3, and it was super expensive. But perhaps most damning was that the online on PSN at that time wasn't as good as what 360 was doing. So, as a gamer, you're not as inclined towards PlayStation 3 in the beginning. Because you're like, well, everybody's playing on Xbox, and it plays better on Xbox. And yeah, are there some things graphically that PS3 can do better? Sure. But 360 was no slouch. There was a lot of beautiful games on that console. So Microsoft is establishing itself at this point as a major player, right? Now they're not just like this third place figure. Like, it's like, nah, we're second, if not even first at certain points in this era. So now things start shifting again, okay? By the end of the 360 PS3 era, you see Sony respond. Sony redesigns the PS3. You get the Slim. They redo the logo. It's a rounded version of the PS2 logo. And in fact, the PS3 logo, this is what they've been using for years now. They just keep changing the number. So the PS3 logo is the same as the PS4, the same as the PS5. You get that rebrand in place. And they start making PSN better, right? Back in the day, PSN was free. Then all of a sudden, there's paid tiers of PlayStation Network, PlayStation Plus, etc. And with that comes better infrastructure. So all of a sudden, you start seeing, like Call of Duty, for example, shifting back towards PS3 and it getting some exclusive stuff. And now 360 is more of on an even playing field with Sony. But here's the problem. Microsoft let that success go to its head. And so when you get to Xbox One, it's a disaster. Because for one thing, people are like, wait a minute, why is it 360? Why is it one now? Don't know. Right? You're just sitting there kind of perplexed. It's a strange numbering. Well, here comes Microsoft. It's Xbox One because it's your one source for entertainment. Everything's on here. Your music, your TV, your movies, your games. It's an all-in-one entertainment hub. And then and then they had this pie in the sky dream of, we're going to kill the used games market. Every game is going to come with a code, and you have to have that code in order to access the online for the game that you're playing. So even if you buy Call of Duty and trade it to GameStop, without the code, it's worthless. The disc is meaningless. Sony's watching all of this, and Sony's paying attention to fan reaction. And there've been a couple other, snafus, like talking about Xbox One being online all the time. You would need to always have a persistent internet connection. And, this is years ago at this point, right? where internet's not quite as pervasive as it is, now comparatively. And you had people asking Microsoft, hey, what about people who don't really have online access, not either consistent or very good? And I can't remember who it was that said it, but it was an executive at Xbox or Microsoft that was like, well, we have a console for those people. It's called the Xbox 360. But for everyone else, you can be on Xbox One and online all the time. It was just the ultimate in like elitist nonsense. And fans felt it and they did not like it. And Sony was smart as hell and basically took a George Costanza opposites attitudes. I don't know if you remember this episode of Seinfeld, but George decides, I'm just going to do the opposite of all my instincts, and this will actually get me more women and better relationships with them. So like he walks up to, I think, somebody in the coffee shop and says, I'm George, I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. Then she like uses her foot to push a chair or a stool over to him, like, hey, take a seat. That was Sony. They were like, hey, you know what? They're saying that you have to have a code in the box to play their games. We don't do that. You take your game and you sell it or give it to whoever you want when you're done buying it. Online all the time? Nope. For PlayStation 4, we'll have updates here and there, but otherwise you don't need to always be online to play our games and be on our console. And damn, that marketing strategy worked. It worked big time. Xbox One was nowhere near as successful as what PlayStation 4 did. And so Sony went from fumbling the ball with PlayStation 3 at first to making major strides to recover all the way up to the end of PS3. And then PS4, you come out the gates running. You have everything in place to make fans happy. PSN's solid. You can play whatever you want on there and the connection will be good. And Xbox is just standing there looking foolish. And unfortunately, Xbox has been in this terrible position now for years. They never truly recovered from what they did wrong with Xbox One. They, of course, changed their attitude towards a bunch of different things. You didn't have to be online all the time. You didn't have to have a code. But it was too late. You poisoned the well. You basically gave gamers the middle finger. And this is a problem that has kind of persisted in the industry for a while. It's this notion of, it can't just be a game console. It's like, it's always this attempt by different forces within the industry, whether it's the game journalists or the studios, but always like, oh, we're going to do this different. We're going to do that different. And it's like, I don't know what it takes for these people to just get it through their head. This is a simple thing. Make a good console that plays good games, that makes the consumer happy. And that's all you really need. Nintendo had kind of set that standard during the PS3 era. You go back to the PS3 era, what was the number one console? It was the Wii. It wasn't PlayStation 3. It wasn't Xbox 360. Wii ruled the market. And now I think Nintendo played into this a little bit themselves, but especially in terms of its competition, there was this idea of, well, we're parallel to Nintendo. Nintendo's doing its own thing, and we're doing our thing, which is different. No, you're not. You're selling games in boxes that are on discs, and people use a controller and they play, right? Microsoft and Sony spent years mimicking Wii, right? With the Move and the Kinect and everything. So don't tell me you're in a separate world when you're very actively mimicking everything Nintendo's doing. All of a sudden, you want motion controls. All of a sudden, when Wii U comes out, you have a second screen experience, right? You can use your Vita or any Windows tablet can be the second screen. Blah, blah, blah. My point is that we didn't have anywhere near the robust multimedia online offerings of Xbox and PlayStation, but it sold like crazy. Xbox One has to be this media center. Why? Nobody wants that. I'm not, it's like if my console can do other things, that's cool. That's a great perk. But the games are front and center and the most important thing. And so it's just, it persists. It persists even now. You know, it's like you've had games journalists for years talking about, oh, the game console is going to go away. This is the last generation. You've been saying that since PS3. Now they've kind of backpedaled on it. We're all the way to PS5. We'll have PS6 in a few years. It doesn't look like the game console's going away. It doesn't look like every time you think of new things, oh, well, it can do this and it can do that. It's like, yeah, but you eventually just come back to, does it play games? Are they good games? Do they look good? It's a very simple setup here. So Microsoft, however, again, they learned that too late. And then here comes Xbox Series X and Series S. And you think to yourself, all right, we're again with the weird branding. Series. And then you're making one version of the console that is pretty underpowered compared to the other, right? So S, a lot weaker than X. That immediately creates a problem because what's your incentive as a consumer to buy the Series X if there's always going to kind of be this impediment in the form of the S? Because you don't want to make a bunch of stuff that won't run on S, so it needs to kind of be able to run on both, which means you're not going to truly be hitting the full potential in some cases for what a game can or can't do, because you are keeping in mind the lesser system, which is significantly cheaper. So you're likely going to be getting more people buying that in the first place. But the bigger issue is that with the series setup, you see Microsoft become hyper focused on buying studios. They buy Activision, right? And all of the game studios and properties that are under that umbrella. All these acquisitions, there's just so many during this period. But you're also seeing strange things happen where Microsoft is like, oh yeah, Xbox, you don't even need an Xbox anymore. You can play Xbox on basically everything. And hey, here's a bunch of our games that we're going to make multi-platform and other people can put them on their consoles. So all of a sudden you've got, you got the Ori games on Switch, Cuphead. Now you're seeing freaking Gears of War on PlayStation. This is bizarre. How is that supposed to work? So you want me to buy an Xbox, but you're basically putting everything that you make on all these other consoles. So there's not really an incentive to have an Xbox, because all the games that make you unique are not unique to you. Game Pass, it can be appealing in different ways, but you're also putting that on different things like PC. There's certain TVs that can play Game Pass. I mean, it just starts making your head spin when you think of the ways that they've tried to put their brand on everything. And it just amounted to, I think, confusion among consumers and indifference. And then you do things like you jack up the cost of Game Pass. It was $30 a month for a while. Now, Asha Sharma comes in and she course corrects, as I mentioned earlier, right? One of the things she did was to lower the price of Game Pass down to $22.99. I still think that's too much, but it's a lot better than $30. However, because you've had this extended period of inefficiency, weirdness, the Xbox brand has just suffered so much. When PS5 and Series X launched, I was working at a GameStop still. And the demand between the two was like night and day. And the Xbox or the GameStops that still exist would tell you, yeah, there ain't nobody coming and buying Xbox stuff. It's mostly people coming in and buying PlayStation. And so it's just gotten worse as time has gone by because you did all those studio acquisitions, and then what did you do with them? There haven't been very many notable releases. It's like, okay, well, Call of Duty's still going, but Call of Duty's multi-platform, so it's another thing you can't put as a feather in your cap. You have God, what was it? Starfield? The disaster of Starfield, where the only thing anyone remembers is Az screaming you're boring. Talking about pronouns. Like that's the legacy of Starfield. So a bunch of just wasted development time and money. And so that brings us to right now. Right now, we're talking about, I don't believe it's official. I think it's still in rumor mode. But this notion that Xbox is considering closing multiple studios, right? So you have Compulsion Games, Double Fine, Ninja Theory, all of them potentially on the chopping block as Xbox is trying to, consolidate, cut down on waste. But the thing is, you hear this and it's really frustrating, right? The initial reaction, I think, from a lot of gamers is, what did you buy all this crap for? Why do you have all these studios if you're going to get rid of them? Well, there's a lot of factors at play here, right? I think one of the biggest factors is that, unfortunately, particularly Western game studios have kind of made this decision. Now, I don't know where the decision comes from, right? I mean, I have my suspicions when it comes to the transition we saw in the game industry, which is, circa 2016, 2019-ish, you start seeing this much more focused attempt to push political ideologies and messaging. Whether you want to hear it or not, there's just no denying it. You can see it from the Western studios. And you still see it, right? Look at Cortana in Halo Campaign Evolved. Everybody's making fun of her new design because she looks awful. She's got the weird squared jaw, isn't particularly effeminate or attractive. And that's an obvious intentional choice. It didn't happen by accident. Because Western game studios just want to talk about, the male gaze. Well, what do you want to, you want to masturbate to Cortana, you pig? Like, that's the mindset. And it's pervasive. And you see it in a lot of these studios from the West and the type of projects that they push. So it's like, okay, well, here's a medieval fantasy game, but you're going to get a lesson on identity politics. Why? What in the world does this have to do with the game that I'm playing? I'm here to slay dragons or something, and I have a character having just an incredibly modern day conversation that doesn't fit with the world of the game. And the other problem is that the games, the largely the legacy games journalism, misspeaking here, games journalism, the legacy aspect of it. So the stuff that has been around a while, your IGNs, your Kotakus, to different extents, right? Because it's not all of them and it's not to the same degree. But a lot of these outlets essentially run cover for what the studios have been doing. So what I mean by that is, if you have a game and the game is very clearly pushing ideology or skewing a certain way politically, the game journalists will intentionally be like, oh, this is an absolutely amazing game. This is the greatest thing I've ever played. And as consumers, you're like, I don't even know what this game is, or you'll play it and you're like, it wasn't that good. Well, the reason they'll say it is because it pushes the right messaging. It pushes the messaging they want to support. So there's this obligation to keep afloat these projects, this mindset, the people within the industry who have found their way into these companies. Because like I said, someone flipped a switch. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was the government. Maybe it was people formerly from the government. You would be surprised if you look into people that worked for different agencies, CIA, FBI, etc., for our government, cabinet members from administrations who suddenly wind up working in entertainment in different capacities. It's very fascinating how that works out. And so, it feels, especially from the outside looking in, it feels like there's a tonal shift around, like I said, 2016 to 2019. All of a sudden, the political messaging starts just going through the roof. Traditional progressive values give way to like extreme progressive values, things that the American middle doesn't really see eye to eye with. And remember, the middle's between both spectrums, right or left. No, it skews very much left, and you're losing the audience. And unfortunately, that includes a lot of the studios under the purview of Microsoft. And so now Asha Sharma has to figure out, how do we make this profitable again? How do we fix the problems Xbox has? Well, I mean, she's making impossible decisions because of what has come before. Now, maybe she's part of this machine and I'm giving her too much credit, but I get the sense that there's a shift going on, right? In terms of American culture and the public, where people are tired of the messaging. It doesn't even really matter what the messaging is. It's like, I'm here for a video game. I'm not here for your left versus right or anything like that. Can I just go blow up an alien, please? And instead, it's like, yeah, but here, look at Cortana. It's like, you're still not getting it. I don't want that. Maybe it was too late to shift gears, but like, Cortana can be pretty. It's not a big deal. But my point is that Asha Sharma is having to combat what decisions were made before and the shortcomings that arose from them in terms of trying to be a money-making venture. You might be successful in getting a legacy media outlet to write a glowing review about how stunning and brave your game is, but it doesn't amount to money, right? So like South of Midnight, I think, is one of those games, for example, that had a lot of talk about like players versus sales, but ultimately didn't really do much in terms of making money. Now, I'm not talking about anything in terms of messaging, quote unquote, in South of Midnight. I'm just saying that that's one of those games that was a media darling, but didn't translate to sales. And so the studio is now on the chopping block. Well, what else do you expect? A lot of money went into making the game, and then it doesn't turn a profit. And what's on the docket? What do you have coming up? I mean, if anyone's going to know, it's going to be Microsoft. It's going to be Asha Sharma. And so they're probably looking at a lot of these studios and saying, this is not going to be profitable. You're once again veering towards messaging, possibly. And I'm not saying this specifically about the South of Midnight creators. I'm saying looking at the problems across the board and all the studios that are on the potential chopping block. she's looking at them, knows what's coming up, and is like, I don't know if what you have cooking is going to amount to sales. And if we tell you cancel it, make a new game, how many years is it going to be before we see any results from that? And we need money now. So your studio might have to go. And that really sucks. But you have to be pragmatic. And a lot of these legacy outlets aren't being pragmatic. And in fact, I would wager, allegedly, right? No proof here. But I would wager that a lot of these studios are reaching out to media contacts and people that are friendly to them, who are sympathetic to their pushing of the so-called message, right? The political activism, because a lot of that infiltrated legacy media as well. Like, you can't ignore that part of it too. You know, the entertainment industry, and then the parallel media industry that covers it via the news. Same kind of ideological capture. A lot of people hired based just on, do you agree with us politically? Well, here they are. And they're all buddies and they're all in bed together. And so if your studio's facing closure, you might reach out to a friend, a friendly writer, to say, hey, they're thinking about closing us. And that outlet might suddenly run an article saying, how dare they consider closing such and such studio and blah, blah. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, you can say that. You can say how much it sucks to see Studio X being targeted for the chopping block. But what have you done for me lately, pal? That's what it boils down to. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not supporting big corpo here, and Microsoft is as big corpo as it gets. But if you produced a game that did not light up the charts, and if management is, maybe there's a shift, right? Maybe someone flipped the switch again and was like, well, all that extremely political slanted messaging that we were telling you guys to do before, we're veering away from it. Well, an individual studio now filled with these ideologues, right? Well, those guys might not be down with your flipping of the switch again. Those guys are, you might have had like an upper level person making hiring decisions, and they may or may not buy into the political thing, but they definitely buy into upper management's telling me what to do. So they go hire based on, like I said, do you agree politically and do you fit certain identity markers? You've got a job. I'm not just talking out of my ass here, by the way. If you don't believe me, go read the D-Files on Film Threat. Disney was doing this. Disney was hiring animators based on their Tumblr accounts, based on what they would post on Twitter, and would be like, okay, well, you kind of can draw, and you're this identity marker and this identity marker. You're hired. Well, I don't really know how to do some of the things that you do at Disney. We'll figure it out. Someone will teach you. I'm not even joking. That is, according to Film Threat, allegedly, whatever. That's what they were doing. Well, when you hire like that, you're going to get a lot of true believers, because these are the little guys you're hiring. You put in place one, and then that person hires their buddies, and all of a sudden your entire studio is just filled with people who agree one way with one political ideology. But take it another level beyond that. In some cases, we're talking some extremists, right? And I know, right? The legacy media, it's, oh, well, the extremists are just those crazy Christian right-winger, etc. No, there are some fundamentalists and extremists on the left too. And frankly, some of them are making games. Some of them are working in very big studios. And in some cases, the ideological capture is just so extreme that if you're Asha Sharma, you might be looking at all the different companies in your portfolio for Xbox and saying, these are very nice people, but they're not going to be down with us saying, hey, can you make a game with attractive characters and you're just blowing up enemies? They're going to be like, well, what about the political messaging? And Asha's like, yeah, we're not quite about that as much anymore. You're going to have a problem. And so, yes, you're seeing studio closures. They're around the corner. You have people stepping down from their position. I just saw this. It was, now I'm not going to see it. No, hold on. You're bearing with me. I'm doing Googling. Here we go. Xbox Game Studios boss Craig Duncan and Chief of Staff Luis O'Connor step down. Leadership figures with long history at Rare depart the organization amid plans for business reset. So you're seeing it. You're already seeing people reacting, or I should say, being aware of the situation and not waiting for the axe to fall and making decisions to leave. This is real. And I mean, I don't want to defend Asha too much. I don't know her. I'm still on the fence about whether or not she's as caring about Xbox as she tries to seem to be and the fans. But she is in this position, and yeah, what else is she supposed to do? You can't make your path based on just feelings alone. And that's what a lot of the legacy media kind of response has been to some of this. It's like, well, think about the games they've made and this and that. It's like, these are money-making ventures, my friends. And there's been, of course, some of the crazies on social media. Oh, it's capitalism. Yes. Consumers vote with their wallet. If they don't want the game, they're not going to buy it. And even if you throw the game into, it's part of subscription service X and Y, and nobody's playing it there either, why is Microsoft or anyone else obligated to keep footing the bill and keeping the lights on? Now, some of these companies want to splinter off and are basically like, well, if you're going to axe us, let us just go independent. We'd rather do that. Sure, let them. Because again, yeah, capitalism. Maybe they on their own can create a product that people want and will support. So the next time Ignition Studios, I think that's the one that made Midnight Studio, I'm sorry. No, South of Midnight, which is... Yes, bear with me again. I'm looking on the screen. I thought South of Midnight Studio was called... Yeah, it's Compulsion. Compulsion Games. Sorry, that took too long. The South of Midnight makers. If they make South of Midnight 2 and they've splintered off and they're their own company, well, this is where the people online crying about, capitalism, well, here's where you step in. If they make South of Midnight 2 with their own money and funding and they're an independent studio, you go buy it. You go buy it and support it. But that's the problem with so many of these voices you're hearing online. These activist people don't play games. And what I mean by that is they don't take a controller in hand and sit and actually play South of Midnight. They're either thieves who pirate this stuff, or they just latch onto it because politically they want to push it. So they don't even care about South of Midnight as a game. They care about South of Midnight has identity politics that I want to support or push, and that's the only reason I care that you might close Compulsion Games. And so they go talk about it on X, on Reddit, on Blue Sky. They make a big stink, but they're ultimately not buying, they're not playing. There is nothing stopping any of the people on social media from going and buying South of Midnight right now. And it's on more platforms now than it was at launch. You can buy it on, I think it's Switch too. I don't think it's on Switch, but you can go get it on a Nintendo console right now. They won't. They're not. And they haven't. They don't actually care about the game. They're not supporting it. And that sucks for Compulsion. Because if Compulsion, like I said, you got a lot of true believers at this point, whether that was the goal or not of these larger, umbrella companies. Compulsion Games, I am sure, believed in what they made. They really wanted people to enjoy this and play it. But instead, it's at the center of, culture wars talk. Instead, it ultimately doesn't sell. And that might just be a testament to the game's not as good as it could have been. But the people sitting and talking about it make it sound like, oh no, this was really loved and on and on and on and on. The sales don't match it. I mean, it was really loved. Who loved it? Who was out there, trumpeting it, making videos, etc.? None of that happened. And so now Asha Sharma has to look at Compulsion, look at what the budget is for keeping them open, for them to work on whatever it is they're working on for their next game. And if you take emotion out of it, if you take, but activism, and somehow that's an excuse to keep a studio open, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Not at Asha Sharma's level, not at Microsoft's level. If they're done with that aspect of entertainment now, the switch was flipped again. Now they're looking just in terms of profit, or how do we push the message and have profit? That mysterious math equation that no one has really figured out at this point. But maybe that's the goal, right? I mean, like I said, Cortana's looking a little weird in Halo. But I think they're having to be more brutal. They're having to be more just kind of purely pragmatic in ways that they couldn't before. And make no mistake, my friends, there's a reason Microsoft chose Asha Sharma to be head of Xbox. Because if you're the legacy media, what do you think the first thing they're going to say is if, white male, straight guy, Phil Spencer, is talking, we're going to close Compulsion? Oh, he's just a racist bigot. That's why he's closing South of Midnight. I'm not even exaggerating. But with Asha Sharma, she's an Indian woman, right? Making, in the game industry in a hugely important role, it becomes harder to just throw that kind of bullshit talk at her. What are you going to say? Asha's a racist? Yeah, the Indian woman's a racist. That's why she's closing Compulsion Games. Obviously not. So I think that there was some strategy there with putting her in charge, because she can make the hard decisions and not get as much flack for it, because it's harder to just use these kind of canned buzzword terms. I mean, that's what the industry does. And it's everywhere, right? It's movies, it's comics. Any political enemy is just an ist and a phobe. And it's been effective, not as much now, but it's been effective in prior years to getting what you want. Because you point the finger and say, hey, he's an ist, he's a phobe. Oh, that's why they're doing what they're doing. That's not okay. You see how this works? But you start putting people in like Asha. Again, I'm speaking totally not knowing her, and tomorrow she could put the wokest game ever made on Xbox. I don't know. But just looking right now, that's what I'm seeing. Is she's coming in making the hard choices because she can make them. and Phil Spencer probably couldn't. But in the long term, does this work out? Does this save Xbox? I don't know. I don't know if Project Helix is going to be a big deal. We're still years away from it coming out. And I hope many years, right? She was actually talking about like how expensive consoles can be. She's like, people aren't going to spend thousands on new console generations. I mean, look at the price increases for a lot of the hardware now. You know, Switch 2 is $500 just by default, and that's the cheapest of all the consoles, basically. So, I don't know. I hope it does. And sincerely, I hope that these studios that are facing closure can find ways to splinter off. Because let's be real here. I don't like that Microsoft has as many IPs under its belt that it does. IPs that it didn't even generate itself, right? I can look at Capcom and the ton of properties that Capcom has. They made all those things. Nintendo made all of its properties. A bunch of the IPs at Sony are just Sony's IPs. But Microsoft, it's like, nah, we just, we threw money. We did the Bob Iger thing, and we just threw billions around to get as many properties as we could and, put them under our umbrella, under our purview. And it's like, why? It's like, you guys shouldn't be in charge of all these different things, because this is the result. Ideology notwithstanding, at the end of the day, this is how these corporations are. What have you done for me lately? We've got all these classic studios, these well-known studios, these beloved studios, all under us. But the second they aren't good enough, quote unquote, we kill them. We shutter the studio and we keep the IP. Nobody wants that. I could dislike a game or think it's politically motivated all I want, but it has the right to exist. These companies, these developers have the right to make them, and they should be able to stand on their own with results that satisfy themselves, Let's say whatever South of Midnight did was enough if Compulsion Games was just its own standalone thing. Let's say South of Midnight did well enough to keep them afloat. Like, they were happy enough with what they made. Well, if you're under Microsoft, that's not good enough. Oh, well, you're happy, but the shareholders aren't. You didn't do good enough for them. Well, that sucks. Why should that be? It's one of the worst aspects of, this corporate nonsense. So, yeah, I hope everything works out for these studios that are at risk. There's, it's just been endless layoffs, right? The past few years, just, these people are gone, this studio's gone, etc. I say if there's a way for any of these studios to just splinter off and survive and make their way, do it. Stand on your own two legs. But they're not winning me over with going to the legacy media and trying to turn this into an emotional issue. Can you believe it's like, well, yeah, if we're just talking dollars and cents, I can see why Xbox is doing it. Yeah, that's the consequence. No one likes the C word, but that is the consequence of your game is meant to teach consumers a lesson about everything from race to gender to et cetera, et cetera. You're not here to teach anybody. And if that's what you want to do, then again, you do it on your own dime with your own independent studio, and you see how the market reacts to it. If your sales suck, then that means people don't want that. And why should Xbox or anyone else just keep throwing money at it? It's like, so what? The idea is you just keep doing it until eventually everyone's like, yeah, I agree now. This games should be teaching me a lesson. No, not going to happen. So, all right, folks, I think I've probably talked I've talked enough. Oh, there was one more thing. Oh, maybe I'll get to this. Let me see how long. Yeah, got time. All right, let's talk about one more thing before we go. EA rolls out advertising platform to let companies market directly into gameplay. We're helping brands become part of those moments in ways that are relevant and built for players. So I'm reading an article from gamesindustry.biz. That's what I was quoting from earlier too. So I don't know if I'll read the whole thing. Let's kind of go through part of it. That's pretty short. US publishing giant Electronic Arts is launching EA Advertising, a new platform that allows brands to market directly to consumers via gameplay. The company says that this will be done through dynamic real-time placements, such as stadium signage and in-game content. In its announcement press release, EA says that this is designed to enhance, not disrupt, the player experience. Going into more detail, Electronic Arts says that it has a variety of different ways for brands to reach their audience. These include custom integrations for specific games and audiences, like in-game challenges or reward-driven objectives. There are also ad units in EA's suite of sports games. So let's kind of break this down. So what is this saying? It's very EA, right? How do we put an ad in the game? Well, I'll tell you, it's not going to be meaningful to anyone. This is extraneous nonsense that fans have told you over and over they don't want. We don't want your ads. We're not interested in them. I don't care how you put them into the game. I will only say this, and it's kind of sort of in defense of EA. Again, I'm shilling for Big Corpo. I know it's terrible. But let's say the sports games are a perfect example of this. Let's say you're Coca-Cola. No, Pepsi, because I like Pepsi better. So you're Pepsi. And you're like, you have this Madden game. And in it, you've got like Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play. And there's all these ribbon boards and, giant screens that display ads in real life. Like if I go to a Raider game, yeah, there's advertisements in the stadium. Can we pay you so that in the game, in the stadium, players see a big Pepsi billboard? Because they'd see a big Pepsi billboard in real life in the stadium anyway. Well, I mean, I don't know. If I had to choose how advertising was going to be inserted into a game, I'd say that would be the least offensive way of doing it. Because it actually is true to life, doesn't look out of place, because you'd see that. If I go watch an A's game, I'm going to see ads for soda and etc. everywhere. Sure, go ahead. Logos on the soccer team's jerseys, because that's what they do anyway. You can pay and we'll actually put them on in the game just like they would be in real life. It's incredibly annoying. It's incredibly corporate, but it would be a reasonable way, I think, of doing this. Where it starts to become unreasonable is, well, we're talking the sports games here, but what are you going to do in other games? Is there going to be a moment in this cinematic video game where all of a sudden there's a Revlon ad playing on a TV in the background? Well, again, maybe that's workable. I can think of ways where it would be workable. If your game's reflecting real life, maybe there are TVs in the game environment. Maybe there's a bar and your character's walking through it. And in the background, it's showing actual advertisements for different products, like actual commercials that would be on YouTube or would be on television. Well, that's not like the worst thing in the world. If I'm not being forced to watch it and it's just functioning as flavor in the background, well, if it was a real bar, they would be having real commercials on. It could be argued that it makes things a little more realistic. But I mean, this is kind of pie in the sky. You know, that's not how it would work anyway. You know, they'd find a way to force you to watch that commercial. They would pause the gameplay somehow to ensure that you're looking at it. I mean, there are smaller ways of incorporating, maybe going back to the soda thing, or let's say it's pizza. Let's say it's the greatest pizza, round table. Don't at me. What if in game, let's say it's an Ninja Turtle? Well, I mean, you've seen this. This is actually a legit thing. Go back to the second Ninja Turtle game on NES. If you play the legit OG cartridge, as you are walking in the game world, you see Pizza Hut pizza on different signs. And this is in the crudest NES way, because, you know, simple graphics, right? But imagine in a new Turtle game, there's pizza, and the pizza boxes are round table pizza boxes. It doesn't really interfere with your experience. You just see the turtles are eating that pizza, and that's what's on the box. And if it's not emphasized and in your face, it's just a background detail. I believe in the original movie, they're eating Domino's pizza. I think those are Domino's boxes. It's never talked about. It's just background noise, product placement. So I don't know. I mean, by default, my response to this is go screw yourself, EA. No one wants ads. You are charging people $70 minimum for these games. 60 to 70 bucks a pop. And that doesn't include microtransactions. That doesn't include DLC. And you have the nerve to also want to advertise? In dynamic real-time placements? How much money do you need to make to stay afloat? That's my question. How much, you know, debauchery and or debauchery, whatever the hell the word is, you know, do executives need to pay for that you're hard up on cash and have to panhandle with ads on top of all the other money that the games generate? I mean, it's perplexing. And just sort of smacks of either ineptitude or corruption or both. But it's freaking annoying. And people are tired of it. And here comes EA. We have EA advertising. I mean, it's just really, really getting old. But that's my take on it. You know, I think that if you were going to do it, there are ways you could do it. But you'd have to be very, very careful about the implementation. And the second it interrupts gameplay, the second it takes center stage in any way in a game, you have officially effed up. There is no place for that. But, you know, a TMNT game and there's a Domino's pizza box somewhere in the environment, who cares? That's not a big deal. You made a little bit of advertising bucks off of it, fine. But, yeah, so, all right, folks. You know, I was tilted at a weird angle in my chair, and I'm sure there'll be a change in the tone of the recording as a result. I'm sorry, I don't care. It's 4:30 in the morning, and yeah. I'll be better next time, I promise. Anyway, thanks for having me. Thanks for listening to me. Again, check out Nintendo Joe. Like I said, the site is prettier. We've even got like Japanese flavor text everywhere. That was another touch from the co-owner. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then Bits and Bytes, head to Bits and Bytes. We're talking everything. And we will have a new episode, you know, hopefully weekly, as close to weekly as I can make it. But yeah, keep it tuned here. Also, I'm considering doing a Nintendo Joe podcast. We have 7 minutes, but 7 minutes technically isn't Nintendo Joe. It's just, you know, I co-own the site. I'm going to put it on there. But I'd like to do something kind of like this that's just for Nintendo and Nintendo games and news. So I'll keep you posted. It might be on the way. But other than that, yeah. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.